My name is Raina Hartley, 30 years old. The air at Westbridge Country Club always smelled the same: freshly cut grass, perfume, and privilege. The kind that clings to you even when you don't belong. I parked my car beneath the willow trees and stared at the clubhouse terrace, the same place where every childhood memory of mine had been dressed in white linen and judgment. I'd made a promise to myself this morning. This time, I'd show up exactly as I was: jeans, soft blazer, comfortable flats, no pretending. When I walked onto the terrace, my father's expression curdled before I even reached the table. "Absolutely not," he said, loud enough for nearby diners to turn their heads. "You are not sitting with us dressed like that." Mom's mimosa froze halfway to her lips. "Raina, what are you wearing?" "Clothes," I said evenly. "You invited me to brunch." "I invited you," Mom snapped, "assuming you'd have the decency to dress appropriately. This is Westbridge, not a discount store." Before I could respond, my sister Vanessa appeared from the ladies' room, glowing in a cream dress that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. "Oh my God, Raina," she laughed. "Are you serious right now?" "About what?" "About showing up here looking like that. There's a dress code." "I'm aware." Dad stood, the silver in his hair catching sunlight like a blade. At 62, Richard Hartley was still the kind of man who commanded rooms by simply existing in them. "This is embarrassing," he declared. "My daughter shows up to the club in bargain bin clothes. Do you have any idea what this reflects on me? On this family?" "I'm wearing a blazer," I said quietly. "A blazer from where? Walmart?" "Yes, actually." Mom made a sound like she'd been physically wounded. "Raina Catherine Hartley, you will leave this club immediately and return when you're appropriately dressed. Or better yet, don't return at all." Around us, whispers rippled. The Vandermeers were watching, smugly delighted. Every club needed its scandal of the week. "I was invited," I said, keeping my voice calm though my pulse thundered. "I assumed you had common sense," Mom hissed. "Clearly, I was wrong. Again." Vanessa stepped closer, voice low, but still sharp enough to cut. "Raina, everyone's staring. Just go home and change." "I drove an hour to get here." "Then you should have thought before leaving the house looking like a homeless person." The word homeless hung in the air like a toxin. Dad gestured toward the entrance. "Leave, before you embarrass this family any further." "I haven't done anything." "Your presence is the embarrassment," Mom said, icy and absolute. "What will people think?" "That I'm your daughter?" "Not if I can help it," she murmured. For a moment, no one breathed. My father's jaw clenched, a familiar warning. I could feel the old reflex to shrink, to disappear. But something in me stayed still this time. I turned toward the clubhouse. "Fine," I said. "Let's talk to management." The main lobby shimmered with marble floors, chandeliers, oil portraits of men who'd built empires on polite exclusion. Dad stormed ahead, his shoes striking the tile like gunfire. "There's a situation on the terrace," he told the young concierge. "My daughter arrived inappropriately dressed, and I need her removed from the premises." The woman hesitated. "Sir, if she's your guest—" "She's not my guest anymore," he cut in. "I'm revoking that invitation. Get the manager." She disappeared, and the silence that followed was brutal. Mom inspected her manicure. Vanessa scrolled her phone. I watched my reflection in the marble. Steady face, shaking hands. When the manager appeared, I recognized her. Patricia Odom, mid-40s, efficient and razor-sharp. "Mr. Hartley," she said smoothly, "how can I assist?" "That," Dad said, pointing at me, "is my daughter. She arrived completely inappropriately dressed for this club. Jeans, cheap clothes. I want her removed from the property." Patricia blinked. "You're requesting that we escort your daughter out?" "She's violating the dress code and embarrassing my family." "I'm on the board, Patricia. Standards must be maintained." Patricia's face didn't move. "Understood. Let me confirm with operations." She radioed quietly. "Security to main lobby." Then she added, "And please locate Miss Hartley." Dad looked smug. "Thank you. I knew you'd understand." Minutes later, Patricia returned, but not alone. Beside her stood Catherine Brennan, the director of operations, elegant in charcoal gray, and behind them, my assistant Jordan, carrying a leather portfolio. Dad's confidence faltered. "What's this?" Catherine's tone was measured. "Mr. Hartley, I understand you've requested the owner's involvement regarding a dress code violation." "Yes," he said. "If the owner must sign off, fine. Let's get it over with." Catherine turned toward me. "Miss Hartley, would you like to address this personally?" For a heartbeat, no one understood. Then Dad's face drained of color. "What did you just say?" Patricia spoke clearly. "Mr. Hartley, allow me to properly introduce Raina Hartley." She is the owner of Westbridge Country Club. Silence detonated like an explosion. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. Vanessa's phone slipped, shattering the hush as it hit marble. That's impossible, Dad whispered. Jordan opened the portfolio, calm as ever. The acquisition closed 8 months ago under Hartley Hospitality Group. Purchase price, $14.7 million. Renovations and operational investments total $8.2 million. Miss Hartley's company owns 14 properties across 3 states. He handed over the documents. Dad stared at the signatures like they might rewrite themselves. Raina, this can't be real. It's real, I said quietly. I've owned Westbridge for 8 months. I just hadn't announced it yet. Mom's voice shook. You work retail. I worked retail 7 years ago, I corrected. Then I built something of my own. Patricia added, her modernization plans have doubled revenue projections. She's revitalized the club. Vanessa found her voice. You own 14 properties? 15, Jordan said. We closed on a boutique hotel yesterday. Dad still clutched the paperwork. Why didn't you tell us? I met his eyes. My father, who just tried to have me thrown out of my own property. When would that conversation have happened? At Christmas, when you bragged about Vanessa's charity boards? Or Easter, when you told everyone I was still figuring things out? Mom whispered, Raina, that's not fair. Isn't it? Catherine cleared her throat. Miss Hartley, would you like to review your family's membership? Yes, I said. She scrolled on her tablet. Primary members, Richard and Margaret Hartley. Associate, Vanessa Preston. And what's the annual cost? $45,000, $12,000 respectively. Membership may be terminated for conduct unbecoming or actions detrimental to club reputation, determined solely by ownership. Dad finally looked up, pale as stone. You can't mean... You demanded I be removed for being an embarrassment, I said softly. Now I'm deciding whether your conduct qualifies as unbecoming. Mom stepped closer, trembling. Raina, please. You're angry, I understand, but don't do anything you'll regret. Rash? I said. Like trying to eject your own daughter from a place she owns? Vanessa's tears began to streak her mascara. Raina, we're sorry. Please don't do this. I let the silence breathe, heavy and final. For now, your memberships are suspended for 30 days, I said. You'll have time to think about how you treat people. And if we don't? Dad asked hoarsely. Then the suspension becomes permanent. Catherine noted it on her tablet. Understood, Miss Hartley. Patricia turned to security. Please escort the Hartley family to the exit. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The daughter they'd tried to erase now owned the walls that echoed their humiliation. As they were let out, Dad turned once, eyes full of something almost human. Shock, maybe, or the first flicker of shame. I didn't move until the glass doors closed behind them. Only then did I exhale, steady, controlled, victorious, and afraid of what came next. The sound of the doors closing behind them followed me like an echo I couldn't shake. For the first time in years, the Westbridge terrace was quiet around me. No voices calling my name, no whispered comparisons to Vanessa, no mother's sigh cutting through air-conditioned perfection, just the faint hum of the lobby fountain and my own pulse in my ears. I walked out to the parking lot slowly, my heels clicking against the stone walkway. By the time I reached my car, the adrenaline was fading, replaced by something colder, uncertainty. Jordan caught up, still carrying the leather portfolio. That, he said, half breathless, was the most intense Sunday brunch I've ever witnessed. I managed a weak laugh. I didn't plan it. I believe you. Still, the look on your dad's face. He stopped himself. Are you okay? Ask me tomorrow. He hesitated before speaking again. You know they'll fight this. Membership suspensions, board privileges, bylaws. Your father practically wrote them. I know, I said. Set up a meeting with our legal team first thing tomorrow. Already on it. When he left, I sat behind the wheel and just stared out the windshield. My hands were shaking now that no one was watching. The rain began lightly, fine mist hitting glass, soft enough to blur the manicured hedges and flagpoles that had been my family's trophies for years. I started the car but didn't drive. It hit me then. I had won, and yet I felt nothing like a victor. Home wasn't the modest apartment my family still imagined. It was a restored Victorian on the edge of town, creaking with history and light. I'd bought it 3 years ago, long after I'd stopped seeking their approval. The keys jangled in my hand as I unlocked the front door. Inside, everything smelled faintly of cedar polish and rain-soaked earth. My cat, Oslo, wound around my legs, purring in question. I know, I whispered. It's been a day. I dropped my purse on the console, kicked off my flats, and poured myself a glass of wine. Then I turned my phone back on. The vibration started instantly. Buzz after buzz, a cascade of notifications. Texts, missed calls, voicemails. Mom, Dad, Vanessa, even two numbers I didn't recognize, likely family friends. The first voicemail began with my mother's voice, trembling but still rehearsed. Your father had to be taken to the hospital. His blood pressure spiked. The doctor says he's fine, but this stress, this is what you've done to him. I paused the message halfway through. The next was Vanessa, tearful but sharp. Do you have any idea what you've done? I'm being asked to step down from the charity board. They don't want the controversy. My husband's furious. You've ruined everything. Then Dad's voice, low and tight. I spoke with Harold Wellington. You remember Harold, longest-serving board member. He says what you did violates the bylaws. We're filing a formal complaint. This isn't over. Message after message. Family friends asking what happened. Distant cousins offering pity disguised as curiosity. Even Aunt Rachel, kind Aunt Rachel, leaving a gentle voice that said, maybe reconsider, Raina. Family's still family. By the fifth voicemail, I stopped listening. I turned the phone face down on the counter and sank onto the couch. The Victorian's old pipes hissed quietly. The rain outside thickened into a steady rhythm. For a long time, I stared at the framed photos along the mantel. My parents at my graduation, Vanessa holding a glass of champagne, a family trip to Maine where I'd taken every photo because I was always the one behind the camera. We looked like a happy family. We weren't. We were a hierarchy disguised as love. I took another sip of wine, felt the glass tremble slightly in my hand. Had I gone too far? That question lingered, unwanted but stubborn. They humiliated me, yes. They tried to have me thrown out. But still, suspending their memberships, doing it publicly, letting everyone watch the fall. Was that justice or revenge? The doubt crept in quietly, like water under a locked door. By midnight, the house was still. I sat in the armchair by the window, wrapped in a blanket, watching streetlights shimmer through rain. For years, I'd imagined moments like this, standing up to them, finally being seen, and yet the victory was hollow. It tasted like silence. I picked up my phones again. A new text from Jordan. Everything's scheduled for 9 a.m. tomorrow. Legal team confirmed. Rest if you can. I smiled faintly. Jordan had always known how to translate chaos into structure. I typed back, thanks, and bring the last 5 years of board minutes. I have a feeling we'll need them. Then I added another message, hesitated, deleted it. Because what I wanted to write was, did I make a mistake? Instead, I locked my phone and turned off the lamp. But sleep didn't come easily. When it finally did, it came in flashes. Marble floors, my father's face paling, Vanessa's phone hitting the ground, my mother whispering, not if I can help it. Every echo of the club replayed in my dreams, except this time, it wasn't triumph. It was a courtroom. Patricia's voice echoed across the marble. Standards must be maintained. And in the dream, I wasn't sure whose standards she meant anymore. I woke before dawn, eyes gritty, heart racing. The house was silent except for the rain easing into a drizzle. I made coffee and opened my laptop at the dining table, pulling up Westbridge's internal documents. Bylaws, membership clauses, conduct policies. The same rules my father had enforced for decades were now mine to interpret. The cursor blinked at me like an accusation. I thought about Vanessa's tear-streaked face, Mom's trembling voice, Dad's disbelief. Was I fixing a wound or inflicting one? Somewhere between the legalese and the coffee, I realized something simple and devastating. Winning the battle hadn't changed the war inside me. At 8:47, my phone buzzed again. Jordan, I'm outside, ready when you are. I closed the laptop, grabbed my blazer, and headed for the door. Time to face the fallout. Not as the forgotten daughter, but as the woman who owned the field where the game was played. The legal team's office sat on the 12th floor of a downtown building, all glass and gray steel and quiet authority. Rain streaked the windows, turning the skyline into a watercolor blur. Jordan walked beside me, laptop under one arm, the other hand clutching a to-go coffee like a peace offering. They're all here, he said softly as the elevator doors opened. Inside the conference room, 3 lawyers waited. Sarah Chin, my lead counsel in corporate law, Marcus Green, who specialized in governance, and young Alex Patel, who never spoke unless it mattered. They rose when I entered. Miss Hartley, Sarah greeted me with a calm, knowing smile. Eventful weekend? That's one word for it, I said, taking a seat at the head of the long table. Let's talk damage control. Sarah adjusted her glasses. Legally speaking, you acted within your rights as owner. The bylaws grant full discretion in membership matters, including termination or suspension for conduct deemed detrimental to club reputation. However, Marcus interjected, board members, like your father, have additional procedural protections. A disciplinary action against a board member typically requires a formal review hearing before enforcement. In other words, I said, I jumped the gun. Sarah nodded. Technically, yes. You didn't violate the law, but you bypassed protocol. If they want to contest it, they can. They will, I said flatly. Jordan slid a folder across the table. They've already started. I found an email chain between Richard Hartley and Harold Wellington. Harold's drafting a formal complaint. Of course he is, Marcus muttered. Harold's built his career on technicalities. Sarah leaned forward, clasping her hands. So we have 3 paths ahead. Option 1, stand firm. Fight them on every clause. You'll probably win, eventually. But it'll get ugly. Publicly ugly. Option 2, reinstate them with conditions, Sarah said. Make them apologize in writing, undergo policy review, and abide by your authority. It demonstrates leadership, not vengeance. And option 3, Marcus added quietly, sell the club, walk away, take the profit, and spare yourself the family warfare. I sat back. Selling isn't happening. The words came out sharper than I expected. This isn't just property, it's proof. Marcus studied me. Proof of what? That I could build something real, without them, in their world, on my terms. No one argued. Even Jordan kept his eyes down, tracing a pattern on the table's wood grain. Sarah finally broke the silence. Then option 2 is the smartest. Extend grace. Let it be your decision, not their demand. I nodded slowly. All right, but before we do anything, I want data. Full audit of the last 5 years of dress code enforcement. Every warning, every suspension, every exception. I want to see how often board families were involved. Jordan smiled faintly. I knew you'd say that. We already started pulling records. Sarah tilted her head. Looking for inconsistencies? Patterns, I corrected. Favoritism, hypocrisy, anything that proves this culture wasn't just toxic for me. Marcus leaned back in his chair. That's bold. You might expose half your father's friends. Then maybe it's time someone did. An hour later, Jordan and I sat in the lounge area outside the conference room, our coffees long gone cold. The rain had stopped, leaving streaks on the window like ghosts of arguments past. Do you think you can actually fix it? He asked. The club? He nodded. I don't know, I said honestly. It's not just policies, it's pride. People like my father built that place to be a mirror for themselves. Changing the reflection means breaking the glass. He was quiet for a long time. Then, I've worked for you 3 years, Raina. You don't just fix things, you rebuild them. Maybe this time you're rebuilding something that broke a long time ago. I looked out over the city, the skyline reflecting faintly in the window. My family? Maybe, he said softly. Or maybe just yourself. By mid-afternoon, the audit files arrived. Jordan spread them across my desk, thick binders of incident logs, handwritten notes, and policy updates. 5 years of judgment in neat cursive. I flipped through them slowly, scanning entries. March 2019. Dress code violation. Member guest wearing denim. Verbal warning issued. Guest. Employee of board member Richard Hartley. May 2020. Member's daughter wearing athletic leggings in dining area. No action taken. Member Vanessa Preston. June 2021. Member guest removed for attire violation. Guest. Non-member from local charity. Report filed by Margaret Hartley. I stopped reading. My mother. Page after page, the pattern emerged. Enforcement when it benefited them. Leniency when it didn't. They weaponized the rules, I murmured. Turned etiquette into exclusion. Jordan nodded grimly. Your instincts were right. It's systemic. I closed the binder and leaned back, exhaling hard. The anger that rose in me wasn't the hot, impulsive kind. It was slow, steady, righteous. I want this documented, I said. Summarize every inconsistency. Prepare a board review draft. We'll reform the policy from the top down. Jordan raised an eyebrow. Before or after you talked to your father? I looked at the rain drying on the glass, streaks catching sunlight like veins of silver. After, I said. I want the facts in hand first. No more emotion, no more shouting matches. Just truth. He smiled faintly. That's the version of you that terrifies them. Good. That night, I couldn't sleep again. The city outside my window glowed orange and restless. I sat on the edge of my bed, the audit binder open beside me. I found an old page from 10 years ago, one that had my name on it. Member guest Raina Hartley denied entry to formal gala for non-compliance with dress code, denim skirt. That had been the first time my father refused to vouch for me. I could still see his face that night, cold and embarrassed, as if I'd ruined his reputation with a single outfit. The memory made me close the binder too fast, the pages snapping shut like a door slammed in anger. For a moment, I felt the old ache of being that girl again, the one who wanted nothing more than to be invited back inside. But that version of me was gone. Now I was the one holding the key. At dawn, Jordan's report hit my inbox. The subject line read, "Preliminary findings, policy inconsistencies, confidential." I opened it and read until the sun rose. By the end, I had everything I needed. Proof of favoritism, hypocrisy, and years of selective enforcement that turned the club's so-called standards into family propaganda. It wasn't just about clothes, it never had been. It was about control, image, power disguised as propriety. And now that I understood that, I knew exactly what needed to happen next. I picked up my phone and dialed my father. The line rang once, twice. Then his voice came through, tired and wary. "Raina, Dad," I said evenly, "we need to talk." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. I could hear the faint sound of hospital monitors in the background, their rhythmic beeps punctuating the silence between us. "You sound tired," I said finally. "I am." His voice had lost its usual authority. It was low, raw. "The doctor says I'm fine. Just stress. Guess that's what happens when your daughter decides to humiliate you in front of half the club." That wasn't my goal. "Intent doesn't change impact," he said flatly. "You turned us into a spectacle, Raina." I let the accusation hang in the air. There was no point arguing about who started it, because we both knew the truth. "Dad," I said quietly, "you tried to have me thrown out." He exhaled sharply, a sound of frustration rather than remorse. "You embarrassed us. I reacted. Maybe I went too far, but—" "No," I interrupted, my voice steady. "You didn't just react. You made a choice. You looked at your own daughter and saw a threat to your reputation, not a person." Silence. Then, slowly, he said, "You're right." That stopped me. "I've had a day to think," he continued, "and maybe for the first time I actually listened to your mother when she told me I was wrong. You've built something remarkable, Raina, but you also burned a bridge doing it." "Maybe that bridge was already on fire," I said. He gave a humorless laugh. "Maybe." I could hear him shifting, probably sitting up. "So what happens now? You planning to make the suspension permanent?" "No," I said. "That's why I called. I'm willing to reinstate everyone's membership, but under specific conditions." His tone sharpened. "Conditions?" "Yes. First, formal written apologies from you, Mom, and Vanessa. Not for me, though I won't lie, it would be nice to see the words, but for the record. You'll acknowledge that attempting to remove someone based on appearance was inappropriate." "Fine," he said after a pause. "And second, you'll participate in a board-led review of our dress code and conduct policies. We'll make enforcement consistent, transparent, and fair. No more favoritism." "That'll ruffle feathers," he muttered. "Good. It should. And the third condition?" "This one's non-negotiable." My voice hardened. "You'll respect my ownership. That means no undermining, no gossiping, no using your board influence to interfere with management. If you can't support the direction I'm taking the club, then step down." He was silent again, and when he finally spoke, his voice had softened. "You've really built something, haven't you?" "Yes. I didn't know," he admitted. "I should have asked instead of assuming. I should have paid attention to what you were actually doing instead of telling myself you were lost." "That would have been nice," I said, but not unkindly. "I was proud of Vanessa because she was visible," he continued. "Everyone saw her on stage, shaking hands, smiling for the paper. What you do, it's behind the curtain. I didn't understand that success could look different." "It can," I said, "and it does." He sighed heavily. "Your mother told me you gave us 30 days to think. I don't need that long. I'll write the apology tonight." "And Vanessa?" "I'll handle her." Something in his voice made me pause. Less command, more weariness. "Dad, are you okay?" "I'm fine," he said, though I wasn't sure I believed him. "But Raina, I want to ask you something. When you stood there in that lobby, watching us being escorted out, did it make you feel better?" The question landed like a weight on my chest. "I thought it would," I admitted. "But afterward, No, it just made me feel tired. That's what power does, he said quietly. It gives you control, but not peace. I stared out the window. The city below was bathed in fading gold light, the first hints of evening reflecting off the glass towers. Maybe peace doesn't come from control. Maybe it comes from truth. He chuckled softly. You sound like your grandfather. I smiled despite myself. He always did like me better. Only because you argued with him. Maybe because I reminded him of himself. That earned a genuine laugh, the first one I'd heard from him in months. For a moment, we weren't enemies. We were just two people trying to find a language we'd forgotten how to speak. I'm sending the reinstatement paperwork tonight, I said. Your memberships will be active once the apology letters are submitted to Catherine Brennan. I'll let her handle the logistics. Thank you, he said. This doesn't fix everything, I added. You spent years making me feel like I wasn't enough, like I didn't belong. I can forgive, but I can't pretend it never happened. I know. He hesitated. I can't promise to be perfect, Raina, but I can promise to try. Maybe that's a start. Maybe it is. We talked for a few more minutes. About small things, safer things. The weather, the renovations, how Mom had cried most of the day. When we finally hung up, I sat there holding the phone long after the line went silent. For the first time, his voice hadn't sounded like a verdict. It had sounded like regret. Later that night, I forwarded Jordan the audit summary and copied the legal team. Finalize policy recommendations, I wrote. Schedule board meeting next week. Include family code of conduct. He replied within minutes. Understood. And I heard the call went well. I typed back, better than expected. Not perfect, but real. Then I closed my laptop and poured a glass of water instead of wine. My reflection in the kitchen window looked different somehow. Same face, same tired eyes, but less haunted. Because maybe, for the first time in a decade, I wasn't just defending myself. I was building something worth keeping. The storm had passed, and somewhere between pride and forgiveness, there was a narrow, fragile peace, one I was finally willing to try for. The following Sunday arrived bright and uncomfortably clear, as if the sky itself had decided there would be no shadows today. I stood in front of my mirror, holding the same outfit that had started it all. Jeans, soft gray blazer, flats. For a moment I hesitated. Then I smiled. Some symbols deserve to stay. When I drove back to Westbridge, the parking lot shimmered in late morning light. The clubhouse's new banners fluttered on polished rails, subtle, elegant, but different. I'd ordered them myself. Modern hospitality, timeless respect. It wasn't about rebellion anymore. It was about redefining what respect meant. Inside, staff greeted me with quiet smiles that said everything without words. Patricia met me at the entrance. Welcome back, Miss Hartley, she said. Or should I say, welcome home? Either works, I replied, and she smiled faintly. They're already seated, she added. Your usual table? The phrase made me laugh softly. Funny, I never had one before. My family sat in their old spot on the terrace overlooking the golf course. For once, it wasn't just the view that caught my breath. It was the way they stood as I approached. Mom was first to rise, smoothing her napkin like it was a peace flag. Raina, she said carefully, you look lovely. I almost answered with sarcasm, but stopped myself. Thank you, Mom. Vanessa looked up next, eyes red but hopeful. Would you like to join us? I would. They'd saved the chair with the best view, the one they used to reserve for Dad. We ordered food, and for a while the conversation danced around safe topics. The renovations, the new menu, the weather. Each silence stretched, then softened. Vanessa broke it first. I read about your hotel in Asheville, she said, twisting her water glass nervously. It's getting incredible reviews. Thank you. And the Savannah property, Mom added quickly. The one you're renovating. It's beautiful. I saw the article. I looked at them both. You've been researching my company. Vanessa gave a small, embarrassed laugh. I wanted to understand what you've built. It's impressive. Dad nodded, his tone measured. I've been telling my colleagues about it. The way you identify struggling properties and turn them around. It's smart. Strategic. For a second, I didn't trust my voice. I just nodded. Mom reached across the table, placing her hand gently over mine. I read the apology letters again this morning, she said softly. We meant every word. I know. This doesn't erase the past, Dad said quietly, but we want to start learning who you are now, not the version we made up in our heads. I looked at him. The man who'd once tried to have me escorted out of this place now sat across from me, waiting, not commanding, not judging, just waiting. Then let's start, I said. For the first time in years, the air between us didn't feel like glass. After brunch, I walked through the lobby. The new policy poster had just gone up, clean white board, gold trim. At the top, in crisp serif letters, Westbridge, Code of Conduct. Respect transcends attire. All members equal under policy. Courtesy is not optional. I stood there reading it twice. Patricia joined me quietly. It's already turning heads, she said. In a good way. You'd be surprised how many members have thanked us. I'm not, I said. People like fairness more than they admit. She smiled. And the Hartley family? I looked back toward the terrace. Through the glass, I could see them. 3 figures seated together, talking. No performance, no spotlight, just talking. We're learning, I said, slowly. That evening, I walked the club grounds alone. The tennis courts gleamed under new floodlights. The gardeners had replanted the rose beds along the walking path. Even the marble steps I'd once climbed in humiliation felt lighter somehow, reclaimed. I paused near the fountain at the entrance, where sunlight caught the spray like diamonds. A few weeks ago, I'd stood here shaking with rage. Now, there was only quiet. Power hadn't brought peace, but truth had. And in that silence, I felt something shift, something unburdened. I took out my phone, opened my company's internal portal, and typed a new note under personal reflections. Lesson learned. You can rebuild empires, but the hardest renovation is always the family kind. Sometimes the blueprint has to break before the foundation can hold. I hit save and locked the screen. As I turned to leave, a voice behind me called, "Miss Hartley?" It was one of the servers, a young man I barely recognized. "I just wanted to say," he said shyly, "it's nice working somewhere that actually feels fair. Thank you." I smiled, genuine and full. "You're welcome. Keep holding us to it." He grinned and hurried back inside. I stood there another moment, listening to the echo of water and wind. This time, when I walked toward my car, there was no anger left, only the steady rhythm of footsteps belonging exactly where they were. If you'd told me a year ago that I'd own this place, I would have laughed. If you'd told me I'd reconcile with my family here, I would have walked away. But life has a way of rewriting its own endings when you stop letting others hold the pen. I glanced back one last time at the terrace where my parents and sister still sat in conversation. They didn't see me, and that was okay, because now they finally saw me everywhere else. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your story too.